Every Night is Game Night, episode 37, our top 10 solo games. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 37 of Every Night is Game Night. This is a very special episode for us because it is super duper long. Just kidding, that's not the only reason it is so special. We got together with Luke Hector of the Broken Meeple, and we put together our top 10 solo games. All three of us did. And so what you're going to be hearing on this episode is the first half of that. Next, probably later this week, or maybe early next week, we're going to be putting out the second half of that episode, aiming for Friday, the regular time. And that's going to take us all the way up through number 1, plus some extra special surprises at the end of that episode. So you're going to get a couple 1-hour episodes this week with our top 10 solo games. And I'm not going to spoil any of it for you, but it was really, really cool and quite interesting, really, to hear how different everybody's take on this was. It's not necessarily just your prototypical top solo games that you see on every list when you average it all out. So a lot of different tastes here, a lot of different ideas. And it's exciting. It's exciting to hear what other people think and to share all those different recommendations with you guys, because it gives a lot of good opportunities to try new games or to get out there and explore new opportunities. There was a few really interesting surprises on these lists. So make sure, if you do listen to this episode, you hop on over to the Broken Meeple, subscribe over there. It is the same episode with Luke's introduction, but this was a joint effort. We all got together. Actually, Luke did all the editing, so he probably did the most work. Thank you so much, Luke. And it was just so much fun. So we're really, really excited to get this out there, to share it with everybody. We're looking forward to doing more things like this in the future, but we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to get your opinions and your thoughts on it, and just to get a good sense of, what games were on your list and what games weren't on your list, etc. So without further ado, here you have our top 10 solo board games.
Hey everybody, this is the Broken Meeple and Every Night is Game Night coming at you with our top 10 solo games of all time. So this is for people who don't know each other's audiences. I am Jason. I'm from Every Night is Game Night.
Hey, this is Anthony, also from Every Night is Game Night.
And I'm Luke Hector from the Broken Meeple, United Kingdom.
All right. Had to put in the
Gotta make that clear. Yeah, gotta make that clear.
Just to rub it in that you're in the middle of the afternoon and we're at the crack of dawn.
No, it's in case they listen to my voice and go, I don't understand this.
All right. So before we get into our top 10s, I wanted to get into a little bit of methodology. How did we put together our list? Did you take your favorite games and okay, these play solo, I'm going to take these? Did you take your favorite solo experiences? Did you kind of curate your list anyway? So how did you approach it?
We're talking more favorite solo experiences more than just favorite games. So, a couple on my list would normally be higher if it was just my top 10 favorites, but it was a hard list to put together because I've got at least about 25 to 30 different games written on this piece of paper here that I had to cull down to 10. And all of them are enjoyable. So it's just a case of trying to figure out, which ones are easier for me to get to the table, but also even if they do take a bit of time to set up, which ones just give me the most decent experience for a solo game versus playing it multiplayer.
Yeah, I took it a kind of a little bit different of a tact. I have a lot of games that are multiplayer, so and some of them are my favorites, but they're not necessarily my favorite games. Like my top 10 games are not represented here necessarily, and a lot of those do play solo. I think what I did was the games that I play most often and generally enjoy every time, less, lower stress. But then there was a couple where I was like, well, I need to have, at least one dice game or I need to have at least one co-op, and those aren't spoilers because it's just what's in the top of my head right now. But, just trying to make sure that certain things are represented, because those certain things, sometimes I'm in the mood for that type of game, and what's the best one I pull off the shelf. That's not the whole list, but there were a couple that I felt myself doing that.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Like I would literally have 10 thematic dice rolling co-op games if I went with my top 10 games. So, but that's not what I'm always in the mood for. I'm sometimes in the mood for, like you said, dice game or strategy game or different types of experiences. So mine was like, I thought about it a little more in terms of different categories. And then I went with best in show for that category. Like, the dog show. You have different types of dogs and which one's the best dog? So I have 10 lead dogs, and so does everybody else. So we are going to jump right into it. Okay, guys, you ready?
Let's do it.
Woof.
All right, Anthony.
You got the dog somewhat.
Jason, you just opened a can of dog puns for the next 2 hours. I don't know.
Yes, puns. Let's do it.
So my first one, speaking of the obligatory dice game, this is where I put that one. And so like a couple weeks ago, I actually had a different game here. I had Hostage Negotiator in this slot. And that for a very long time was my favorite solo dice game. And may in the long term end up still being that with the new content coming soon. But that's not the one I put here because recently I've discovered a different game. And it's not really a dice chucking game, but I'm going to consider it a dice game because you're rolling a lot of dice. And there's a certain amount of luck into how the game plays out, and that's Sagrada. So Sagrada is it's a game where you're making stained glass windows. You roll some dice, you draft them, and you place them into this little window space with these different slots, and you're trying to match a certain pattern and maximize your score based on placement and everything else. And it's a pretty cool little game. It's very puzzly, and it has a lot of very interesting ideas to it. I'm pretty excited about it. Again, it's relatively new, so this is me kind of... It's
Cult of the Newing.
Culting of the Newing, yeah, that's what I do. But at the moment, it is my favorite, and I've been playing it for a little while now, so I'm going to give it the props here. And we'll see if Hostage Negotiator comes back in 6 months, but at the moment, it's Sagrada.
Certainly looks pretty. I've no idea, to be honest. I think it's only just got released over this end, and I've yet to see it being played or grab a copy. Looks pretty. I mean, it's stained glass windows and a lot of coloured dice. I wasn't even aware it was a solo game at first. I thought it was a multiplayer sort of dice chucker, but I'll have to give it a look just for aesthetics alone.
Yeah, it is 1 to 4, and it plays great with up to 4. It's not one of those ones where it's like, oh, you should definitely play it with less. No, it plays fine. The solo version is more of a puzzle. You have less flexibility in what you're doing, and you can vary the difficulty in a lot of different ways. So there's these cards that you can play. They're tool cards that give you special abilities, and the more of them you have, the easier the game is. So you can have, like the normal game is 3. You can start with 5 in the solo game and have as few as 0. So it's pretty cool like that.
So this game, people are comparing it to Role Player. Like I see that question asked on the groups on the forums a lot. Like, which one, Role Player or Sagrada? I have played Role Player, have not played Sagrada. I do like Role Player. We'll see if it shows up on someone else's list. All right, Luke, give us your number 10.
Number 10 had to battle out with my number 11. And in fact, I had to, the previous night, go and play these two games again just to find out, is it definitely this one I prefer? And these are two from the Omniverse series of games. Shadi Tobe from Z-Man Games have done these, and they're very popular solo games. Nyrim just got knocked off for number 11, even though I do think that's a very good solo game. I'm just very bad at it. I seem to have a difficulty winning the thing, despite making good choices. But my top pick for the Omniverse one, my number 10, would be Sylveon, which I know isn't necessarily the most popular on a lot of other people's lists when it comes to this series. But the Sylveon one, where you've got that tower defense scenario of defending against this big fire elemental and you're protecting your forest, I like those types of games anyway, because they're quite tactical in how you do it. It's not just, you've got some card draw luck, but how you defend is up to you. But what's elevated this one above Nyrim is the advanced rules, where not only do you can add in some extra winning conditions, you can also almost tailor draft your collection of these forest creatures. They're like your people that you defend the forest with. And you go through this phase of laying out the cards in columns, selecting them. The deck automatically scraps some out of the game, depending on what you draw. And so you're having to decide, well, which creatures do I really want this game? I desperately need some of those fountains. I need some of those trees. And before you start the actual game, you've already got this unique deck that's different every time, and that's what's elevated it above a Nyrim for me. Bit more of a setup, bit more of a lengthier playing time than Nyrim. I'll give it that. I would love to see this come out as an app like the new Nyrim one. Onirim, I don't know, whatever the pronunciation of that is now, but Sylveon takes my 10th spot.
Onirim,
right. Is it? I've heard it said Onirim so often. It's only just now I've heard Onirim, but apparently that's the official way, is it?
We'll put a phonetic spelling in the show notes. Sylveon, that's an interesting one because that's actually my least favorite of the Oniverse series, just because I find it very solvable. Like, when the deck comes out, I know kind of the way the deck construction comes out, the deck seems a little bit different. But I find that I go for the same stuff every time. Like, a 4-point fountain is there, I'm going to take that 4-point fountain. Or certain cards, if they're there, I'm going to take them, and it isn't that different. And I just find that it's really easy, like easier than, like you were saying, Onirim, which is a really smooth game, but you lose every once in a while just because of the card luck, no matter how good decisions you make. But Sylveon, I find that I just don't find the challenge there. I mean, how do you find the challenge?
There's plenty enough of a challenge. I mean, I played it last night just to double check the things, and I just won as a close call. You can tailor the difficulty very easily by just starting with some, the official rule in there. You can just start with some trees already, burnt before you even begin. And the expansion that adds in the Betrayers also throws a spanner in the works, where sometimes you'll end up discarding more cards out of your deck. I mean, to be fair, I don't play these two games enough to be called a veteran at them, so it's not like I'm winning them on a regular basis. They still give me enough of a challenge. But no, I don't find myself necessarily aiming for the same animals each time, so I do try to mix it up a bit. One game, you want to get the biggest fountains, but there'll be one where I'm like, right, I'll try and get some of these squirrels and doves or whatever to mess around with the fire deck, or this time I'm going to get tons of stags and, whales, and I'm just going to load up on trees, so even if I do get burnt, I can recover at the end. And it does lend itself to some other ways of doing it, but I find I've got more control over what I do than in Onirim, because with Onirim, I can decide, I'm going to place this card or do this when a nightmare turns up, but the deck might just say, you know what, you're going to lose, and this is why.
And it's funny because if somebody is not familiar with Sylveon, they hear about I'm going to draft some whales and stags, and it's like, what the heck is going on here?
Oh, that's got to be enough reason to check it out. I mean, forest creatures defending the forest from a fire elemental. It sounds like a film that that should be a Don Bluth animation film in the making.
All right. So I'm going to get to my number 10. I know I gave Luke a little bit of grief about his, and of course, I'm going to come in with something really weird and not technically solo. It's 2 to 4, but I'm just kind of adjusting it, and it's very easy to adjust. So this is my kind of kids family game, and it's a dexterity game, which for me, I feel like you could really play dexterity games solo just on their own. Like, you could flick, or you could build, or you could, do whatever dexterity games want you to do and just practice. And your own goodness or badness at it is the resistance that you require. But I really wanted to get a kind of a kids family game on this list. Pretty important to me, like something with a big toy factor. So I went with Junk Art. Junk Art is from, at this point, Plan B Games. I think that they renamed the company there. Big wooden box with a lot of big wooden chunky pieces, 15 pieces per person. And the way you play this solo is, so every set of player pieces has a base. So you put, and this is actually in the rules, I think this is the PISA set of rules. So there's a bunch of different rule sets. So you just take one of them, which is to put 2 bases in the middle of the table and just try to build as high as you can. Try to build a structure where all 15 pieces are fitting together. And if that's too easy for you, then include somebody else's pieces. And then include somebody else's pieces. So now you're going 30, 45. I've actually seen people on Twitter have built 60-piece structures. I'm not doing that. I got big shaking sausage fingers. Me and Anthony are like, these fingers were made for slapping down, not building up. But it's really super fun, and it really, when you're doing it, like, I've actually used this game in therapy where I'll just build and people just get into like they use their hands pretty effectively, and it's just fun. So like big toy factor, very very easy to appropriate to a solo scenario. So I'm going junk art for my number 10.
So essentially playing with toy Legos. So,
with some rules.
Here's some Jenga blocks thrown in there.
That would be weird to put Legos as my number 10 now. Come on. All right, so we're moving on to our number 9.
Well, there's not going to be a huge amount of Euros on this list, even though I do enjoy a lot of Euro games. But this one's definitely the heaviest of the heaviest one, most of my collection, to be honest, on my list, and that's Uwe Rosenberg's Fields of Arle, which is certainly my go-to solo favorite of his games. I mean, he's done so many of the resource management style games, and several of them I own, like Caverna and Feast of Odin and that, but Fields of Arle gets my vote because I don't actually often play this 2-player. I prefer this as a solo game, and it is just basically like Uwe Rosenberg's greatest hits album, because it takes every little piece out of Agricola, Le Havre, Caverna, and some of his smaller stuff, shoves them into this one game and goes, all right, sandbox though, how many options would you like? Go nuts. And, whether you're building up your moors, your fields, your animals, trading with cities, building vehicles, buildings, upgrading your tools, you've got so many different choices and only so many actions to do it with. And yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve in terms of getting the rules in your mind. But then once you do that, everything kind of flows very smoothly. And if you think, well, I don't really know if this is going to work out for me, well, just go ahead and do it anyway, because you can always just pack it up and try again the next time, and you learn it as you go. But yeah, if you want a true sandbox Euro, I can't think of many better ones than this to go for.
Yeah, I love the sandbox element of this thing. It's like he took everything and he's just like, do something with it.
I just want to be able to choose my own thing. It happens with a lot of games I like in general. I want there to be enough paths to victory or enough strategies where I can go, you know what, I want to do this, and I don't want the game to hit me for it, to slap me for trying to be unique.
Yeah, definitely. And this one almost made my list. There's another game that'll come up later. There's a reason it didn't quite make my list, but it is definitely one of my favorites. And I like the idea because he does put a lot of solo rules into several of its games, but this one is designed for 1 or 2 people in mind. So it definitely, you can feel that.
Yeah, I hear there's an expansion coming out for it later at some point. I've heard rumors of one that adds the ability to have like a 3rd player or something, and I'm kind of half dreading that because it's like, it's pretty long already. I don't want more players.
Yeah, I don't think so. No. I mean, I guess it would open it up to more people, but 3 people with that, God, it was like 3 or 4 hours.
Well, that 3rd person will not be me. You guys have fun.
It's all right. Here's some Lego pieces. You have fun. Put you in the corner with the glittering glue.
So we go from Lego pieces to giant depth of strategy to hair pulling dice chucking. Yes, so I have another game that is the exact opposite of a strategy game. This is my my go-to dice chucker. It is Space Hulk Death Angel. So this is the Fantasy Flight game that was licensed from the Game Workshop Warhammer 40K property, which is now out of print. So I see a lot of people kind of jumping on this, and do I get the expansion? Is that for $20 each? So it's kind of gotten its own little buzz now that it's out of active circulation. So you are a bunch of Space Marines. You control it. It's 3-handed, which isn't the best, but it kind of works. And you're going through and you're defeating aliens and you're rolling dice and you're dying. It's really, really hard. Your dice can just like really screw you, right where it doesn't feel good to get to get messed with like that. And it's awesome. And I like it better. Like there's other games. There's One Deck Dungeon. There's Hostage Negotiator. There's a bunch of other dice games, like faster paced dice games. I like this one. It's the most visceral. It's the most stand up at the table. At one point I was at a con and I was playing this with a friend of mine, and Z Garcia and Sam Healy were at the next table, and we were rolling the dice and we were just getting so excited. And Z is like raising his eyebrow at us, going, "Oh, what's going on over there?" And Sam's like, "Hoo-yah, Marines! Kill those gene stealers!" It was awesome.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest, knowing Sam. So.
Oh my! It was so much fun, and it obviously you're not going to be screaming out to yourself solo, but maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you're that kind of gamer that just likes to get excited and stuff. So Space Hulk Deck Angel, easily my favorite dice chucker. That's my number 9.
Any game that enables you gives you the chance to either role play it or just go nuts and get into it is always a good thing. So I've not actually tried this one. I don't know. Maybe I'll see it at the expo next week, because I tend to see it like on sale or clearance, or some people put it on the bring and buy and that. So maybe I'll just have to grab it if it's cheap and give it a shot, because I do like the 40k universe.
Yeah, you kind of have to play it up because it is brutal. Those dice rolls can be brutal.
Yes. So, Anthony, what is your number 9?
All right, I'm going to take it back away from the dice chucking.
Away
Back to Euro territory?
Yes. Back where I'm comfortable. So I wanted to include at least one Automa game on here, and obviously there's one relatively recent one that's been quite popular. But I picked a different one. I picked the first one, actually, Viticulture, with either Tuscany or the Essentials Edition, whichever variant of this. There's been like 6 different releases at this point. But Viticulture, with the Automa expansion added, which is created by Morten Monrad Peterson, it is not just a solo version of a worker placement game. It is almost feels like a new game, using the pieces and the mechanics of Viticulture. The way that the Automa deck replicates what an opponent would do, blocking spaces, minimizing resources, counting down the available turns and the available actions that you can take. It really, really feels like you're playing against, this opponent of some sort. The whole point of an Automa deck is to make it feel the same as it would as if you were playing the game with other people, and have the tension and the stress and the okay, I need to pick my actions carefully because there's only going to be so many to take. And this one does it really well. It was one of the first ones to do it really well. And the reason I picked this one over, like, say, Scythe, which I also really like, is it's a little bit quicker, takes up less space on the table, has all that extra stuff in the box. On the Tuscany side, there's a lot of content here to draw from. And even if you have the Viticulture Essentials Edition, there's still a lot of good stuff there. So Viticulture it's one that keeps coming out. And, for a while when Scythe first came out, I was playing that way more. But I do find myself playing this a bit more now because I don't necessarily want to leave Scythe on my table for hours, weeks, months, because it's such a big setup and breakdown. So yeah, Viticulture, that's the one for me right now.
Certainly do like it. I mean, it's my second favorite game of all time, but it does, I don't find myself playing it solo as often. Maybe I just haven't gone for these Automa styles yet, or perhaps it's just because I like that multiplayer aspect for worker placements where, all right, somebody could actually block my move and this throws a spanner in the works. But I suppose maybe it's also the variety, because the people I play it with, we try out different things. Everyone sort of gets into the theme of it. So I pull it out every now and again for solo, but I've just found myself always wanting to do the multiplayer, providing it's the Essentials or Tuscany, because it would be a lot further down my list if it was just the basic original version.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I don't think I've ever played a game with such disparity between the base level and what it does when it's expanded. So much better. And it's funny because I like worker placement. It's one of my favorite mechanics. This is probably the only one that really replicates the reason I like it so much within a solo experience. But I understand what you're saying. It does feel very different playing a multiplayer versus solo. I just happen to like this solo pretty good for what it is. So yeah, I definitely understand that. I think a lot of other ones, what it ends up being is you feel like you're practicing the game. If you're playing whatever solo variant it has, like Caverna or Agricola or something, you're just practicing the game to get better. This one, you're actually playing the game, which is pretty cool.
I gotta get this to the table. I've not played Viticulture. It's Luke Hector's second favorite of all time, and I have no idea what he's talking about.
You've got to get this played, man. I mean, if you want a thematic Euro, it's not. I mean, the one or two things in it can be argued. Okay, that's slightly off, but you can't help but just get sucked into it. I mean, you want to play this game with a wine glass in your hand.
All right,
possibly some cheese.
If you're hungry.
All right, so we are going to transition to our number 8. So I'm going to lead us off with number 8 right now. I am going to make Luke pretty happy right now because it's funny because when I'll pop in every once in a while to the Facebook solo group or Twitter, whatever it is, I will see somebody who is dressed in a superhero outfit preaching to the masses about this game, how amazing it is. Luke really definitely stumps for it, and I'll give him a break on it for a little while. Don't know if it's actually on his solo list, but Sentinels of the Multiverse is definitely on mine. It is one of the first games that I picked up solo when I started playing solo games a couple years ago. So I'm not that, I haven't done the solo thing for a long time. I wish I had. That'd be really awesome. But no, this game was really super, super fun. You're playing three-handed, which is, not a lot of people's favorite. And in this game, there is a ton of tracking. There's a ton of hit point management. There's a ton of, you got to watch this person's, in this game, you're a bunch of heroes and you have a fixed deck of powers and you're fighting against one boss monster. So there's a lot to track. So like the bosses have minions and the minions will do something different and the bosses have all different abilities and this activates then, this activates then. So it's really frustrating for a lot of people to get into, but so much fun. And once you get into it, once you kind of get over that hump, it kind of flows. Like you kind of get familiar with the boss, you kind of get familiar with the types of status effects that are on there, and it's just so much fun. So actually, what I wanted to ask Luke was, because I know this is one of your favorite games, and I'm not going to ask you to spoil it now, but I do want to ask you to compare this game to Aeon's End. I think Aeon's End is probably a better game. It's a more solid game. It runs smoother. Maybe, faster, especially because the setup time for Aeon's End is pretty involved. But it's definitely so much smoother. It's almost disorienting how smooth the boss runs. You just put a card down and do a thing and it's done. Where in Sentinels, there's a lot of upkeep. So did that kind of make a difference for you, or are you still on the Sentinels bandwagon?
Oh, certainly having a good time with a big smile on my face basking with that one, especially with the lead up. But
it's
will
funny,
it be on this
like...
list? Will it be on this list? We don't know. But I don't remember being dressed in the superhero costume, though. That must be someone else. But Xeon's End, I've played it and reviewed it, and I do like it. As a game, it is very good, and I agree with you, yeah, there is a little less upkeep in that one because of just drawing the card and playing it. My only thing with Xeon's End is that Sentinels, one big thing about it that grabs me is that you have your own deck tailored specifically for you. This is your hero, this is your deck, it's not like anyone else's. Whereas Xeon's End is a deck builder. So it feels more like, I'm almost like playing Thunderstone with a few tweaks. It's just going up against one boss as opposed to a bunch of little guys in a dungeon. And, ignoring component quality and the really bad insert and stuff for Xeon's End, it was a Kickstarter after all. The artwork is good, the gameplay is pretty solid. I just find that one takes despite the fact it's smoother, it seems to take longer, especially when you do have more players. I think that solo mode is the best way to play it, but the difficulty scaling on that is some bosses can be an absolute nightmare trying to beat them solo because I don't think it scales as well as, Sentinels doesn't scale perfectly, but 3 or 4 players, yeah, you can get by with that. But with Xeon's End, if you just play with a true solo deck, it feels very different difficulty-wise than if you're playing with 3 players, which, to be fair, actually, 3 is probably my favorite because I like that wild card for the turn sequence. Although the downside of using that turn sequence is that can blow up in your face as well because the way the turns go could just hose you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's still solid, though. If I was going to keep the 2, it's going to be Sentinels.
What you were saying before about, because I was kind of, it's apples and oranges. Aeon would probably make a top 20 if I went that list down that far. But for Sentinels, I get so attached to the characters. I get so attached to like the art style, and people kind of rag on the art style. I think it's good, and it got better as the series went on. Do not look at those early Tachyon cards. They are pretty rough. At the end, it gets a lot better. And there's a lot of fan content for this. So my man, Matthew Bishop, who is, I believe, a listener of the show at this point, put out the fan-made Cauldron expansion. I print that out. That's honestly the reason why I like to play the physical version rather than the app. The app is excellent. The sidekick is also excellent if you want to kind of keep track of the physical version. So there's a lot of tech support for this game. So it's going to keep hitting the table. I kickstarted Sentinels of Earth Prime. I'm in. Just so that's Sentinels of the Multiverse. Anthony, I know that you are not on the Sentinels bandwagon.
No, I am not.
So feel free to move on to your number 8.
All right, number 8 for me. So it got my co-op in here, but of course it has to be a Euro co-op. And I don't actually know how long this one's going to stay on the list, just because there's a new one coming out pretty soon from the same designer that takes a lot of the same mechanics and ramps them up to 10. But right now, Robinson Crusoe from Ignacy Trzewiczek is my number 8. It is a perfect not exploration, but a more adventure and survival game. I loved these kinds of books when I was a kid. I still love these kinds of books of people lost or exploring and having to overcome all these odds. And that's exactly what this game is. It's tight, resources very tight. It can be very luck driven at times, but I like that because you never quite know what you're going to get, which definitely feels thematic. And that whole idea of the narrative seeded into the deck, where you're drawing cards and you take an action or don't take an action, and then based on what you do, it affects what might happen later. That's such a great idea, and I'm so excited to see how that kind of plays out when ramped up to 10 through a digital app with First Martians, which is coming very, very soon. I don't typically like games like this. This one, though, is really, really good and it's been up here for a little while. I didn't get to play it too much until the most recent version came out, just because I couldn't find a copy, the old Z-Man copy. But now that I have it, I've been playing it quite a bit, and I'm very excited for First Martians, which hopefully should be shipping here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're going to get demos of that at the Games Expo, and that's going to be one of the first things I beeline for. You know, whether it's going to replace Robinson Crusoe normal remains to be seen. The theme of Robinson Crusoe is a solid one, and my only beef with the newest one is that everyone's just suddenly gone on this Mars craze all of a sudden. I don't know if it was the movie or whether it just became an IP that everybody wanted to, but all of a sudden in the last year, we've just had Mars this, Mars that. I mean, we couldn't even just go to a different planet. No, it had to be Mars. I don't get where this obsession has come from.
I've been obsessed with that forever. I've been so excited. I am a little worried that we'll be burnout, though, because you can only have so many Mars games.
We've already got at least 5 or 6. It's ridiculous now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could have as many Cthulhu games and zombie games, I think there's plenty of room for Mars games.
Oh, I don't deny that, yeah, Cthulhu and zombies need to stand down. I love the Cthulhu mythos. I'm not particularly big on zombies, but yeah, they do need to die. Those themes need to
zombies need to die. That's a good trick.
They need to die again. Just to make sure they stay down. Game designers are like this a lot, though. I mean, whenever anything becomes remotely popular or when an IP becomes public domain, you start seeing games nick it all over the place. I mean, if you've noticed all the recent Sherlock Holmes games that have been out, I think that's because the IP for that has recently become mainstream. And so there's Sherlock Holmes games everywhere now.
And I've yet to find a really good one. I love Sherlock Holmes, but we're getting way off track. Oh my goodness. Do you have a Sherlock Holmes game for your number 8?
No, instead I have a different franchise, very popular, although the movies aren't doing it credit, let's say, at the moment. But out of all the legendary games, which you've got Marvel, you've got Predator, you've got various ones, in terms of which one's best solo, hands down goes to Alien Legendary, which even though one of the rules in Alien has you like coordinate with other players, there is, an official rule from the expansion that now tweaks what that happens in solo mode, and it's now like perfectly balanced for that. But it's just probably the main thematic deck builder I have found, because deck builders are not inherently thematic. It's difficult to get something where you're tailoring cards to fit well with the theme, and even Marvel Legendary struggles a little bit. But with Alien, it just seems to work. That sort of complex across the top where you've got the locations and things come out hidden. So you've got to scan the area first with your tracker, and as aliens flip, they do different things, and all the scenarios are tied to the movies. You've got a couple of new ones in the expansion, but originally it was the 4 movies. And even though 2 out of the 4 movies aren't that great, they're still fun to play in the card game, thankfully. But it's great to just, play the second movie, for example, and it's like, your new objective is set up the sentry guns. Oh, I remember that. And, now you've got to go kill the queen and things like that. It's very tense, and any game which has a death where you can basically die from a chest burster impregnation is already scores it multiple marks, because that's the best way you can die in any co-op game. Is it, oh, you died of thirst, oh, you died of dysentery. No, it doesn't matter. Dying from a chest burster is the way to go.
See, to me, I'm not dying from a chest burster in that game. I'm dying from a massive 7 hit point thing that came out in turn 2, and I am not prepared for it. And I spent 20 minutes setting up that game, and the game is over, and now I have to break it down for the 20 minutes. And I've spent more time stepping breaking down than actually playing, and it was not great when I played. So, yeah, legendary. Woohoo!
They've only got 3 H points, the facehuggers. I know that. So.
I'm confusing it with, I know Legendary Marvel does that more. Legendary counter system is a little bit more solid, but still, I played Legendary Firefly a little while ago, and it was kind of the same thing. It wasn't as turn 2 kind of a loss, but there was just so much stuff coming out that we just couldn't, like, it just got, really overwhelming really fast. And we even had, like, veterans of the system, and they're like going, oh, this is great. They're having the whole Legendary experience. I'm like, I don't want this experience. This is
It's harder when you play with more players, I'll admit. I mean, that's why they give you preparatory rounds in order to sort of shore up your cards a little bit before the nasty stuff comes out. But yeah, I mean, it can be like that, but most co-ops are all about telling a story or having the experience. Even if it does go completely wrong, it's usually just quite amusing to get that. And yeah, I mean, if you've set up the game and it ends quite quickly in a bad way, then, well, just put the cards back and play with the same routine again and see what happens the second time. But yeah, that can happen. That can happen with all sorts of games. I mean, even with Euros, I could be 30 minutes into the game, know that I've made a massive error, and I know that I'm going to be sat there for the next 3.5 hours while everybody else actually has a run-in, while I'm just sat there pretty much going through the motions.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, like, I like this one, actually. I played it, but I haven't played it solo. And I think part of the reason that I haven't gotten around to picking it up, even though I know a lot of people do like it, and I had enjoyed it multiplayer, is just the theme doesn't really hit it for me. So, like, if you love the theme, like it sounds like you do, I think it sounds like it would be a great solo experience. Whereas for me, I think I'd fall more in Jason's camp of, that card sucks, versus knowing exactly what it is that's killing me.
Yeah, if there's a theme you like out of the Legendary series, then go pick up that particular theme. I mean, despite the movies getting pretty sucky from like 4 onwards, I still love the Alien and Predator franchise in general, so that's always hit off. In fact, I don't think Legendary has put out a theme I don't like yet, although I'm not as massive a fan of Big Trouble in Little China, but I got some nostalgic connections to the sort of 80s cheese, stuff like that. But yeah, superheroes, aliens, predators, Firefly, they're like 4 of my favorite themes.
I really wanted to, because I like aliens. I really like Predator. I grew up on Predator. I really wanted to like the AVP movie, but watching that movie was kind of like eating a burger without the bun or any toppings. It was just all beef, like here, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh, this is like, the first Alien was a horror movie. Like, the first Alien, like, really, it wasn't like an action movie. It was just like, it created a lot of mood, created a lot of tension, and it just turned into this kind of big Hollywood. Anyway, getting off track. I don't know if you felt the same way about the Alien movies. They just kind of drifted off towards like generic action.
Yeah, I mean, you can't always do what Cameron does to a movie, but yeah, I mean, you got the first one, the best horror movie of all time, then you got the second one, which is probably one of the best action movies of all time, and then you've got, oh my god,
and then all right, so we are going to move on to our number 7s.
Right, back to the Euros. Yeah.
It's funny, like taking a step back, it's funny. We have yet to have a crossover, and we are just totally different, like, representative genres and experiences. This was really cool. I thought we would have a crossover by now, I'll be honest with you guys.
Give it time.
Yeah, it'll happen. All right, so my number 7 is, so I looked at the big, huge box Euros with solo variants, and I was like, which of these do I like the best? And so Fields of Arle was a close second. I definitely like that one a lot. Some of the other Rosenbergs aren't as good. They're really just high score modes or practice modes more than anything. The one I really like, and I know a lot of people give me grief for this, but I don't care because I like it so much, is A Feast for Odin. This one is similar to Fields of Arlen a little bit, just in that you kind of have this sandbox that you can play in all these different options to, I think there's 80 different actions you can take. And the game itself is pretty much the same as the regular game, except you are playing two different colors of meeples. And so the actions you take in round 1 will block in round 2, and then round 2 blocks round 3, et cetera, et cetera. So you can never take the same action 2 rounds in a row. But otherwise, you're just playing the game. So it takes about 40 minutes once you know the game, which admittedly takes a little bit of time just because you have all those action spaces. But once you do, you can knock it out pretty quick. And it's just this big, massive, messy, glorious puzzle, which I love. It's Rosenberg throwing every single mechanic he's ever thought of into a single game in this giant box that looks like it could bury a pet. And it's just this incredible.
Oh my god! That's where you went, bury a pet.
Feast of Odin comes with free cat.
Well, I was going to say coffin box, but it's not quite wide enough to be a coffin box, unless it's a cat. So,
man, this got dark fast.
Like cats, leave them alone.
That's true. I'm sorry. No, this is a really good game, and I'm not the only person, but it's a pretty fantastic game. So, yes, A Feast for Odin is my number 7.
I need to get it to the table a bit more often to sort of give it a view. I've still got it, still like it, although I've yet to figure out how moving onto a separate island actually wins you the game, because you sort of take this new island and then you end up with a bunch of negatives and you can't physically fill the island up. And it's like, okay, I'm obviously playing badly, or there's something I'm missing, because suddenly I don't want to ever move. But the only thing that slightly puts Feast of Odin lower than a lot of his other games that I prefer, like Le Havre and Caverna, is the fact that in those games I find the theme comes out stronger, whereas this one, using that patchwork system of the Tetris pieces, kind of just throws me for a loop. And it doesn't make it dry, but it makes it almost laughable in certain situations. Like, here's all my plunder, and out in the garden I've got this nice big square where everything's laid out as a big Tetris shape with all these bits stuck everywhere, all the plunder and all the random coins out there. And the actual feast makes me laugh so hard, because that one you put the food on there, but it's not how much food you put on the table, it's whether you get it to cover the spaces or something in the row. So it's like, so forget giving me this giant pig and all this fruit and that. As long as you got this bread going across the bottom, that's fine. That's enough to feed a Viking, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually the area I hear people being like, what is this? What is this patchwork thing? What is this puzzling? And I'm like, but I love that part, but it doesn't make any sense. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I like it. You throw a little bit of abstract into my Euro, and apparently I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's good fun. I'm going to hang on to it, give it a few more tries. There's a couple of friends at my group that adore it when I showed it to them, so it's like, okay, I'll bring it more often. Just, yeah, probably isn't the one I pull out for solo, more for multiplayer.
Still playing with my Legos over here. Carry on, guys.
It's as close to Legos. It's close. You're putting pieces together. You got to match them up. Huh?
I'll tell my 2-year-old just like that. Here, play with a Feast for Odin and see what happens.
Oh, God.
Maybe in the future expansion, you'll be able to stack them on top of each other as well. It'll be a bit more of a
3-dimensional Feast for Odin.
All right, Luke, what's your number 7?
Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one, because, yes, you were asking for a crossover. We've now got one, but it's not with you, I'm afraid, Jason. It's literally just with what Anthony's been saying about Robinson Crusoe, which I remember. I still have to apologize for this a lot, because I originally put it on my overrated games top 10 when I played it like 4-player a couple of times, and was like, I'm not seeing where the hype for this is. It's like, it's okay, but it's just taking too long and, massively hard. Then I bought it and tried it a few times solo, and now I pretty much universally play this solo, because the game just goes a lot quicker. You've still got Friday and the dog as characters, so you can basically play almost like 3 separate people. There's still loads of variety in that box, and the theme has been coming out more and more as I've got into it, and also as I've started to get a little bit better at the game as well, because it took me a long time before I even worked out how to beat the first scenario, let alone try out the others. But the theme is coming out strong with that. I am definitely looking forward to First Martians. Whether it will replace it or not, I have no idea. But I'm a big patriot for apps in board games. So this whole concept of having the event deck essentially a giant app is certainly looking strong. So fingers crossed. If anyone's going to pull it off, it's Ignacity. But a few days' time. I'm getting in on this demo.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I mean, I pre-ordered it, so I have a copy coming sometime in the near future, but I wish I got to play it soon.
Yeah, actually, Robinson Crusoe, I like Robinson Crusoe a lot. It missed my list because there's just too much luck at the end of the game. So I don't mind luck at the beginning, in the middle, luck in terms of random layouts of tiles, which there are. You don't know what tile you're getting. But when you're towards the end and you're making that final rush to I have a giant, beautiful hut. I know the storm clouds are coming, but my hut can take this. And no, because the dice just kind of hose you. Which, again, I don't mind in a shorter game, but in a longer game, 45 plus minutes, I just have an issue with all of your best laid plans turning to nothing because of dice rolls. It doesn't always happen, but it happens often enough where it's like, oh, Ignacy.
I thought I was the one that did long games. 45 minutes? That's not. That's a fine enough length.
I love too when we talked to him about it too, and he was just reveling in that. He's like, ah ha ha ha, the luck. Your guys die.
It's the story part of it, though. That's what I don't mind about co-ops doing that, because I get why most people I know that don't like the co-op genre will go on about the luck side of it, which is legit. If you really don't want your best laid plans to potentially get hosed, then the co-op genre is going to cause you issues. But I love the experience up until the end more than the conclusion. I could lose at the very end and we'll be like, we were so close. But that hour that you've been doing it is the experience and what I've enjoyed throughout, especially if it's really close. I mean, if you do manage to win it, then great. Everybody's cheering, hands up in the air. But with Robinson, it's whether I win or lose, it's what happened during the game. And if you want an example of that, then go watch Dice Tower's live broadcast that they did from a convention where Ignacy taught Sam how to play the game along with Z and Tom. And yeah, they lost on the 7th turn. There was no way they were going to win. But I have never laughed so hard watching them play a game ever, just with the sheer amount of jokes and silly little things like Tom being the chef and cooking things like stone soup and dodgy mushrooms and berries, which cause them all to be ill, and Sam blowing away every animal that's in the jungle that you can find. It's such a great laugh.
All right, well, I'm about to, I guess, label myself a hypocrite a little bit because my next game is long and random. But, I think, in terms of Robinson Crusoe, there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So, I guess I don't like when you're strategizing and you're brain burning and doing all that stuff, and then luck comes in to kind of foil that. But if a game is just purely random and thematic, and I don't mind that, and I can go on for a long time with that. I'm a D&D player, so of course there's nothing but narrative and randomness in D&D. Hopefully a good story comes out of that. But my number 7 is my narrative experience, my choice for a narrative experience. Luke, this will make you really happy. It is Betrayal at House on the Hill. Gotcha.
This is a silence of happiness.
No, it's not. I wish it was. It's a good game until it breaks when the trailer comes out. It's actually, but it is as weird. It is Tales of the Arabian Nights. So Tales of the Arabian Nights is not a solo out of the box, but there's very little interaction between the different characters as they travel along the path. What it does is you're just there and you're going from spot to spot and you're reading. At each spot, you're having some sort of random crazy encounter, and the encounter just has nothing to do with any kind of skill whatsoever. So there's no Tetris pieces in. There's no burying cat coffin characters in this game. It is just, or maybe you actually might have a story where there's some sort of crazy thing that happens with a cat in a coffin. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that part of the book yet. But, I have gotten lost and fought polar bears, and then, you fight some Maharaja somewhere and you come up on the other side of the world. It is crazy. And there's a scoring system which kind of makes it a quote unquote game. But come on, you just make it as long as you want to make it. You have a fun story at the end of it. And as a solo experience, I think there's that. I think there's a resistance to kind of playing this kind of game solo because it's okay, why would we want to tell a story by myself? But we read. So, on ourselves, right? This is, we read choose your own adventure books, that kind of thing. This is kind of I find that very, it's a similar enough experience where I really enjoy it. And so, I want, Like there's a bunch of games out there like Winter Tales and Sojourner Tales, and which is more recent, that have tried this and not done very well. I think have gotten a lot of negative buzz. I'm hoping that 1001 Odysseys coming up from Asmati Games does this right for the soloist. But for now, until that comes out, my pick is Tales of the Arabian Nights for a awesome narrative experience.
Yeah, I mean, the scoring system, nobody cares. I just sort of say, I'll play for 90 minutes, flip the table, and see who did the best or had the funniest story, because you really just don't care about that scoring system. But I didn't usually bring it out solo, and yeah, I get the argument. If someone says, well, why would I want to do it by myself? And it's like, well, we did choose your own adventure books. It's the exact same thing. So, except this time you get a little bit more humor out of it. But no, I mean, I can see it going there, and we're coming to this point in the list where you can certainly tell that one of us has a Euro-centric list, one of us has a co-op-centric list, and the other one has a list where the game was not designed for solo, but is going to be solo anyway. So it's like
yay, playtime!
Nice wide variety.
He's calling you a cheater. I don't... Oh man, this
play
game.
These games. Listeners, play these games. You tell me if you can play these games solo or not. Darn it. Okay, so we are going to move on to our number 6.
Well, I'm going to make Jason happy because obviously, I mean, I love chucking dice as well, and this is a dice chucker. We've already mentioned it in passing on this list, but this is one where I bought the game, tried it, liked it, didn't feel like keeping it because there wasn't enough content, but now I've kickstarted the new one that's come out with all the bells and whistles, and that's Hostage Negotiator. This one, yes, it's a dice chucker, it's going to have luck in it, but it's so short, it's so easy. The theme is actually fairly strong because it does represent a lot of the whole negotiation process of, all right, lull them in. Oh, it's going to pop. Right, send in snipers. It's all going down. But what really sets this one apart is the individual enemies that you go up against, because each one changes how the game plays out, how it ends so well. Your first basic one, I think, is just your average nutjob terrorist. See the world burn. I'm going to start killing people left and right if you don't do what I say. And that's one way it plays. But then you might flip to the next bloke who's just this, generally nice guy father who's just so desperate for medical bills for his daughter that he's resorted to a terrorist hostage situation in order to get them paid. And with that one, he's not killing people left and right, but it's difficult to convince him out of his problem. And it just works really well with all the different scenarios. And there's so many of them now. I can't even remember how many there are, but when the Kickstarter came on for the box, I just went, you know what? Yeah, I want a complete storage solution for this, and I want to get back into it. So it's probably, looking at my list, that is my go-to dice chucking solo game.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this one's really, really close for me. I've really enjoyed it for the last couple of years now, and I also back that. So I'm excited to get all the new content that's coming on the way, because base game out of the box, like you said, it's fine, it's fun. But when you add in all those extra, different versions of the game and the variants and the way the kind of game tweaks and the narrative is different and the reason you're doing these things is different. You're still chucking dice, but it does add a lot. So totally agree with you there.
The best thing this game did was AJ Porfirio, who is one of our solo game Facebook friends. Hopefully he's a listener of the show. Who knows? You're invited on the show anytime. He invited a bunch of guest designers to do some of the bosses. So it was cool to see the different people kind of take the mechanisms. And it's a simple game, so you can kind of build a lot on top of that basic engine and do really different stuff with it. So like, you have a one bad guy who's like Speed, that old movie Speed, where like he's on a bus and the bus has to stop and go and all that kind of stuff. So that was really good. Breathed a lot of life into the game. So I really did not like the game. Like I did not like it. But getting into those bosses, I definitely kind of turning around on it a little bit. My number 6. I'm about to make Anthony happy. So no more toys, at least for this one.
We made it. We made it to the real list.
We've made it to the adult section.
And this one is really, one's really a brain burner. My 2-year-old's not going to play with this. This one is, well, okay, so it's my strategy game, and I do like strategy games. I know I kind of, make fun of it a little bit, but I really do like sitting down and burning my brain. But my thing with those kind of games, like I really have to get into the theme. For me, the theme unlocks the mechanics. If it's just a dry Euro, I have no chance. But if I at least can hook into the world of the game, the style of the game, the art, the graphic design has to be clean, and it just, as long as I can kind of get into that, I can do pretty well with these. The real answer to this is Through the Ages, but I'm gonna stop my tendency to give you solo games that are not solo on the box. I will give you a solo game. This one I use a solo variant for, but then that's the one I play a lot. But I'm gonna give you a game that plays solo out of the box, really great, which is Shakespeare. Shakespeare, I'm not gonna say that Shakespeare has a theme where you really feel like you're dressing actors and you're writing stuff. That's I'm not gonna go that far, but the game has great style. The game has great, the art is great, and the actors, they're really funny. Just kind of looking at the whole presentation of the game, and it's a really tight game. I'm not a huge fan of games where the resources are really tight and you always feel like you're behind. So like Agricola has always been stressful for me. This game is like that, but it's faster. Like you can knock a game out in like 40 minutes. And if you make a mistake, then you can kind of see your mistake, you kind of reset and do it again. Mistakes will kill you in this game, no question about it. But you just clean it up and do it next time. It cleans up fast. It's very tight. It's very satisfying. I'm loving me some Shakespeare.
This is such a good game. I'm so happy that it made someone's list because it didn't quite make mine. But it is one that I greatly enjoy as somebody who studied this for years in college, and can kind of look through all these different cards and pick apart the different from the different plays, and really thematically, I mean, it's as thematic as any Euro, I guess, but it really does a good job, I think, of kind of capturing what it is like, or at least in that time, to put on a play, and the different elements and the different stages and the different things that matter, and gotta love the part where you have to pay the actors, of course. So and the fact that it only takes like 30 minutes to play and you still get basically the full experience, you don't get that in a lot of Euros, period. And it does take, an hour and a half or so to play with other people. So it really does streamline it down and lets you kind of dig into the game and the mechanics, which I really, really enjoy. I highly recommend too the expansion, which gives you something to do with the workers that you do not use in any given round. So you can kind of make sure that you're always doing something with all of those. I think it definitely adds a lot, just one little deck of cards. But yeah, this is one that didn't quite make my list because other Euros are ahead of it, but it's one I really like.
Not played it, but I would certainly like to. I've only seen one person locally have this game, and I just wasn't available at the time. But if we're able to get this out before the Expo, if somebody wants to bring it to the UK Games Expo and find me, then I would like to play this one, because it looks like something I would enjoy if it's got at least a strong enough theme to get into it more. It's not like super dry.
All right, Anthony, you're number 6.
More Euros. Let's do it.
Where's your senseless toy that is on the list? We got to come together here.
I don't know. Let's see. Do I have one? No, I do not. So mine is my number 6 is Terraforming Mars. This is one of my favorite games from last year, it's about Mars. Yep. This is the Science Mars game. So the main game is has a lot of buzz right now. It's risen in the ranks in BGG a lot. There are some detractors now that people played it a decent amount. Giant deck of cards, obviously a little random which cards you get. If you're playing with other people, you have to draft. Otherwise, the game can get very frustrating for some. Don't play with 5 people. It's way too long. But as a solo experience, it's one of the better implementations I've seen in a Euro, because it adds a timer. You only have 14 rounds. You have to complete all 3 global objectives, and your score doesn't really matter unless you win. If you win, obviously you want to see how your score is, but you just need to win, and it's hard enough to win, and that's fantastic. It's tight, it's hard. I only win maybe half the time. Some of the corporations it's easier to win with than others, so the game comes with, I think, 10 or 12 different corporations, And so you're not even just playing the same game over and over again. You can say, okay, I'm going to be the mining guild today and see if I can beat the game with this. Or I'm going to be this one that gives me extra titanium and see if I can beat it with this. And some of them are much easier than others. And just getting your engine built up quickly enough so that you can actually terraform all those different ratings. I think there's something like 43 total things that you need to do in those 14 rounds is difficult. And up until the last round or two, you never quite know if you're going to make it. And so I love that. And it still only takes like 45 minutes because you're playing by yourself. You're not waiting for everybody to read all of their cards, which is one of the reasons the game takes so long with everybody. So yeah, Terraforming Mars has been at my table over and over and over again the last year. And I'm super excited for these expansion maps that are coming here in the next couple months because then I get new maps and the old one's starting to get a little dry because I've played it so many times.
How are you going to get different maps for this, though? I mean, Mars, I mean, they've already done the whole planet. So what, are they just going to have Mars with a slightly different layout?
I think it's just different parts of the planet. So, or maybe zoomed in on certain areas.
Maybe a different planet, God forbid, terraforming Venus.
It would sell less. Nobody wants Venus. Nobody cares about Venus.
Yeah, you could go to Venus? Come on.
She should fire. She should desire.
The movie wasn't The Venetian. The movie was The Martian.
Exactly.
Venetian. Terraforming that is a hit or miss one with mine. I did the review recently, and I mean, there was a mix of oh yeah, I agree, and a mix of taking garbage, which you have to when you don't give something a perfect review. That's the hype. But I actually reckon this one I would enjoy more if it was done solo. Playing it in solo mode because that sounds a lot better. It doesn't take 3.5 hours like the normal 4 to 5 player game does. You don't have to wait for downtime because you are just getting it done. And there's not the luck of the game is toned down a little bit because even if you draft the cards, I mean, you might just not get the ones in the draft you need, and somebody might just instantly get the ones they want, particularly if they're playing next to a player who hasn't played before and doesn't know what to block. The first game I had of this was at, I think, AirCon last March, and it was 5 players, 2 new players, went on for over 3 hours, and all I was getting was comets, meteors, asteroids or something, despite the fact my corp had nothing to do with that stuff. And it wasn't necessarily because I was choosing them, it's just because that's all that ever appeared in the draft. So I couldn't exactly do a huge amount with it. But I mean, I get its popularity. It just hasn't sung well with me. But I suspect, solo mode probably beats multiplayer mode easily.
I do like this game a lot. I like Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy was a tough cut from my list because I do like that a lot. Terraforming Mars is like that, the board game, and gives me the same kind of building a tableau, getting your engine going. And the theme is awesome. So yeah, definitely, Anthony, I agree.
You can play Race solo.
Yes, you play Race all sorts of solo. It's in the first expansion. I'm not even making it up this time.
You see what you've done? Expansion. Nobody trusts you.
I've just not seen it played solo. But I mean, to be fair, it would be a good one to play solo. I mean, I don't like playing it with more than 2 players, so 1 or 2 sounds like a good way to do it.
The very first expansion, and this is like an old expansion, 2007 or 8 or whatever it is, had solo rules, and it worked really well. I probably, Terraforming Mars kind of leapt ahead of that for me, just missed the list.
All right, guys, we're going to have to leave it there at our number 6s. Next up, we're going to be running into our number 5s down through number 1. Make sure you check back on that episode. It should be up by the end of the week. And we will bring you our 5 through 1, as well as a couple of extra very interesting tidbits that we threw in at the end of the episode that I'm very excited to share with you guys. But that's going to go ahead and be everything for this week. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed hearing all 3 of us together at 7 o'clock in the morning on Skype, at least our time, make sure you hop on over to the Solo Board Game group where we should have a thread running for both episodes, as well as the Board Game Geek Guild for Board Gamers Anonymous 1735, our Facebook page Board Gamers Anonymous, on Twitter, both feeds at BGA Podcast and at ENGN_podcast. You can find us all over the place. And of course, make sure you head over to the Broken Meeple, subscribe to Luke's podcast, check out his blog. Lots of amazing content. You know him from the Dice Tower, but he's all over the place. So make sure you get over there and check out what he's been putting up. All right, guys, so that's going to be everything for this week. Make sure well, it's not going to be everything for this week, actually. So we got more content coming. So make sure you check back here on Friday for part 2 of our top 10 solo board games. We are excited to share it with you. But that's going to be everything for today. And until next time, grab a solo game off that shelf and let's make every night game night.